Welcome, Marcus.
Oh, thanks.
You know why we missed you?
Why?
Because we were worried about you.
That's true.
We were.
Why don't you tell us
Did
why?
you guys only find out via social media?
No,
you
you
told us.
texted us. It was midnight. It was like super late. I was in bed the night before, the Thursday night. I'm in bed playing my puzzles, listening to my audiobook, my bedtime routine, and then get a message. It's like, I'm going to have to cancel tomorrow because I just got into a car accident.
Oh, right.
I'm on my way to the hospital.
I don't blame you for not remembering, given what you were going through.
Yeah, I was late. And I got hit by a car.
Yeah, you got hit by a car.
Yeah. Just one.
Just one? So how did it happen? You were a passenger.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're on our way to a climbing gym and go to take a left turn. And it seemed like one of the situations where a dude was just trying to make a red light, did not stop, and yeah, hit my side on the passenger side. And then what was it? Like we're turning left, we get hit, and the car does like a bit of a 180 and flips. So we're like going backwards down the road, but we're going at a bit of an angle, so it wasn't quite 180. And then we only stopped because we ran into like a traffic, crosswalk sign, like a signal. Yeah, and so like it was quite trippy because I'm like I knew the car was coming. Like I was yelling my buddy's name right before it hit us, and we hit the traffic signal, and I immediately kind of went into like assessment mode. Yeah. I'm like, all right, I don't feel any like crazy pain. I'm not bleeding. Well, there was some blood, but nothing like profusely.
So we're seeing just like a few scrapes
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
So not bleeding profusely.
Yeah. There's I had a scrape in my arm, and like we were both like panting. Like we both had quite shortness of breath. So like I'm like, dude, like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, like, are you good? And like we're just like trying to catch our breath. The fucked up thing is the dude who hit us, while we're catching our breath, walks over to the driver's side window and just starts yelling, "Your fault, your fault." Oh. And so we're obviously just sitting there like,
you're like, listen, you piece of shit.
we didn't even respond. We're like, yeah, we're trying to figure out what the fuck to do.
Am I missing a limb?
Yeah.
And, you know?
Yeah. And so like, unfortunately, like my buddy was like he was quite a bit dazed, whereas like for whatever reason, like my mind was kind of like, all right, what the fuck do we do? And so like all of my like survival skills kicked in of like, all right, undo the seatbelt, fucking, you know, I go to grab my phone, and it ends up being his phone, and try to do like the Siri emergency services, like holding the volume and the power button, hit that.
Does that call 911?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The stupid thing is, side note, because I've been wanting to use it like my whole life.
Yeah, you've never had a reason.
And I'm like, we got T-Bone. I'm like, this is a good time to use this.
Just calling 911 in general. Like, when do you get to call 911?
But I want to use this feature. So like, yeah, slide over like calling emergency services, and like I'm still shortness of breath, but they pick up and they're like, what's your emergency? I'm like, I'm in a car accident. They're like, what city are you in? I'm like, what? Like, I'm like a bit like shocked of like, what do you mean what city I'm in? I'm like, you should, like, this is an iPhone. How do you not know this?
Can't you just track my phone and figure out where I am? Like,
so that was like, and I'm like out of breath. So my buddy's like, I'll take it. And he passed him the phone. And then I'm like, yeah, like looking around, I'm like, Kyle, get out of the car. And he's like, what? I was like, Kyle, get out of the car. He's like, yeah. Like, and so he gets out, and I'm like, I realize I'm like, my door was like smashed in. And then because we hit the traffic thing, I'm like, I'm not even going to try. So I'm like, just like, Kyle, you need to get out of the car, and like planning to climb over him, climb over the seat. There's fucking glass everywhere. Like, I don't even know how, but there's like glass, like there's a fuck ton of glass in my shoes. And even afterwards, like he had like a handful of glass in his like jacket pockets.
Wow.
It was like everywhere.
Did all the windows break?
No, I think it was just mine actually, and probably two. Like
the windshield?
I don't think the windshield was cracked.
wow, because it was the passenger side where you were sitting that was hit.
Yeah.
It could be like the impact of everything, right? And things move and the frame shifts. I don't know, but yeah.
Airbags didn't go off, but But
Well, it was a side impact.
yeah, we like get out. Fire department's there probably in a matter of minutes. Just start asking questions of like, what's your name? What city are you in? You know, where are you?
Assessing your cognition.
But yeah, then we're just like, I'm like out of breath. And I'm like, I need to like sit down. Like I can't, I'm having trouble breathing and it's been a few minutes. Like I used to do boxing when like as a kid. Like I know what it's like to lose my breath. But yeah, I'm like, oh, it's like, I'm not catching it. Like it's not coming back. So I'm like, oh fuck, like I need to like sit down and relax. Because even, yeah, again, like even, you know, while we're as we're getting assessed, like I'm doing, you know, my fucking EMDR
Like
butterfly taps
yes.
to like try to like, I'm like, no, I need to do this. And I look at my buddy and I'm like, Kyle, do your butterfly taps. And he's like, shakes his head and like rolls his eyes. And I'm like, fine, be traumatized, like whatever. And so, yeah, like they ended up like the fire department like ends up like opening the back door. I just sit in the back of the car. So yeah, we ended up like opening the back door so I can sit down and just waiting there until the paramedics come, walking like, you know, limp over to the ambulance.
Yeah.
And then sit down and like, that's the annoying thing. So like, who are you? What's your address? What's your name? I like pull, again, iPhone. Thank you, Tim Cook. Just pull up my emergency card and I'm like, I don't, like, I'm out of breath. I'm like, I don't want to fucking talk. Like, just read this.
Here's my emergency card. Take care of the rest.
No allergies. Here's my address.
Yeah.
Like, answer your own questions.
During this time that you're going through this, was the driver who hit you still part of the picture?
Yeah, a little bit. So he didn't talk to us. Like he didn't come at us anymore. But it was really funny because when me and my buddy were in the ambulance, I guess the ambulance driver came back, or the ambulance person came back into the cab and was like pissed because they're like talking to the other paramedic and they're like, this fucking guy apparently is wanting to get in the ambulance. I told him no because we have 2 passengers already, and he's apparently hurt his hand and is trying to get an ambulance for his hand. So apparently the paramedic told him, we are super busy right now. If you want another ambulance, you're going to be here for your hand. You're going to be waiting here for probably a few hours.
The audacity of that person.
The guy's like, can I have a hand massage?
Whoa.
And so that was like the paramedic. He literally told that story probably like a good 3 times throughout the night to other staff members. Yeah. He was pissed.
Yeah. It's very like disrespectful to the work they do.
So the paramedic officer was like, sir, I highly suggest you like have your own transportation to urgent care or wherever the fuck.
Well, if you go through an accident and only your hand, I mean, unless you have a bone break, like obviously, but like you can take a cab, take an Uber. Yeah. Don't use an ambulance.
Which at that time, like I'm in the ambulance with like, you want painkillers? I'm like, no, because I'm aware of addiction and, you know, stuff with medication. I don't know what's wrong with me. I just know I have trouble breathing. So I'm like, no, and go to the hospital. All this happens at like 6 o'clock. Get to the hospital like around 7:30. And I don't get like actually checked out until probably a good, I don't know, maybe like 11:30ish.
4 hours.
Yeah, but like I was watched. Like it wasn't I was by myself or anything. Like the paramedic stayed for quite a bit.
It wasn't that emergent. Yeah.
I'm a bit surprised because whenever somebody is short of breath, I find that's more urgent.
Yeah.
But they would check your oxygen.
And they were checking my I have never had my vitals more checked than last week. Okay. But yeah, they were checking my vitals, all that stuff, and it was fine. But yeah, come to find out, I have 3 broken ribs, and I had pneumothorax, which is, I think, like a punctured lung. It's not quite a collapsed lung, but it's like a punctured lung, or you know, like I don't know whatever. But basically, like they describe it to me where you have your lung and your wall cavity, and like usually it's flush, and I had a gap that was like trauma, you know, induced,
like contusion, like.
And so when I first got my CT scan and my X-ray, it was like, oh, you know, they were measuring it at 1.7 centimeters. They measured it again in the morning at like, must have been at like 8 a.m., something like that. And it grew to 2.4.
Oh, so like basically your lung was collapsing.
Yeah. And then I think I did another one that Friday, again, later that day. And or maybe it was the next day. I can't remember. I think I got a total of 6 X-rays in 4 days.
Oh my God.
But yeah, it was growing from like 1.7 to 2.4 to 3.3. And then they're like letting me know like, yeah, if it keeps getting worse, like we need to get rid of that space because your lung's going to collapse, and they have to manually go in and put a tube in to release the blood and the space and the pressure. Yeah.
From what I understand is hella painful.
I don't know. Luckily, I avoided it.
I just know that from watching Grey's Anatomy. So don't fact check me.
Yeah. But they had me doing like breathing exercises, and they're like, I think it was like, yeah, it was, 6 or 8 in the morning on Thursday. And they're like, you need to keep moving. I know it sucks, but keep moving and using your lungs, because if you don't, and you sit still, you can get pneumonia. Then you're gonna have a real fucking problem. And so I was like trying to like just go to the bathroom and like I had like a little walker in the hospital, like trying to take steps and stuff. But yeah, that was my accident.
Were you in a little hospital gown with your butt poking out?
No.
Oh, that's good.
I was in rock climbing sort of clothes. I had sweatpants, shorts. I had a freaking tank top and then a hoodie underneath.
Oh, that's okay. At least you're comfortable. I hate those hospital gowns. Okay. Good.
Yeah. Wow. What hospital did you end up going to?
Foothills.
Yeah. Nice.
Foothills. Did you find it challenging? Because I remember texting you thinking in my head, I was like, I don't want him to be alone going through this. But then I think what might happen, and I've heard from other people with hospital stays, is that you have too many people coming to kind of overwhelm you a little bit at the hospital. Did you experience?
I'm a raging extrovert, so I don't know what that's like.
Okay.
Like it was really great. Like I had my partner, like I immediately, like when we literally got out of the car, I'm like, call my partner, like to my buddy who was driving. So she knew immediately, and she was waiting for us just to leave for us to get taken in the ambulance to let us know like where we're going. So she was on it. And then we were meeting up with friends at the gym. Like we have our classmates that we go with. And so while we're also like waiting for the ambulance, we called our friends, let them know, because we were 3 minutes away from the gym. We were almost there. Call our friends. We're like, hey, they're going to tow we got into an accident. They're going to tow our car. We have, stuff in here that we need. We'd rather not go get it from impound lot on a random whatever day. Can you come grab our stuff? And they're like, of course. So our friend showed up. It was really cute because like my friend tells a story where she showed up and like saw our stuff. And because I broke my glasses and I had like one arm missing when we got hit, somebody grabbed my glasses and I was like, I can't wear these. And I put them on the trunk just like while I was like chilling out. And then she showed up to the accident and apparently was like, I saw your glasses, and I immediately like almost started bawling because she was like, it's like, just this thing of like, I'm literally in the ambulance and there's my broken glasses signifying my injury.
Oh my gosh. He's broken.
Basically. Oh my gosh. And then my buddy was like in shock because apparently like he's in the ambulance and she shows up and like he comes out to like meet her and he's like, hey Taylor, I need to grab my stuff, and like goes like walk away, and she's like, Kyle, give me a hug, like slow down, and like yeah, so it was a thing. Oh, but anyways, no, like, and then my partner showed up at the hospital, and then basically Taylor, my friend Adrian, and then my friend like Adrian's partner Waz, who's also like an incredible friend with the group as well, also showed up. So we were rolling deep in the hospital, which was pretty nice. Unfortunately, my friend Kyle had to basically wait in the triage area. I was in the back the whole time, obviously with breathing issues, so I was like prioritized. And so, but yeah, they were all in the waiting room, like I think until like pretty late.
Were those the friends who were at the climbing center?
Yeah.
Okay, so they left the climbing center to come be with you guys. Yeah.
We're like, we're not working out, obviously.
No, could you imagine the kind of friends that's like, whatever, let's get our workout on? Like, no, I'm glad you have good friends.
No, like, and then literally the next day, like, so my buddy Kyle, who's driving, he got his x-rays. He didn't have any broken bones. He just had like some pretty significant like bruises and like some like chest pain, obviously, because like apparently he was grabbing his steering wheel, and so like he just like squeezed super hard, obviously. So he had like some chest pains afterwards, but they're like, you don't have anything broken, like you're good to go. Yeah. So he got let out like 2 a.m. Friday morning. But yeah, the next day, I got admitted. I'm in, the trauma unit, whatever. And like all three of them came back and like we're hanging out the next day.
That's lovely. I love that.
Thank you for telling us the story. You're telling us the story of like everything that happened, but at what point did you find like that experience, I guess, of like having to retell the story. How many times did you have to like retell that story through that night?
Yeah, I would say I think I probably had to retell a story probably a good like 3, 4, maybe 5 times. Just like fire department comes up, what happened? Paramedics come up, what happened? Get to the hospital. People are triaging and checking you in. What happened? And people are like the paramedics are filling in the gaps some, but you know what I mean? Like so like it was a few times.
Did that add to your level of distress, having to retell it? It's something that was so difficult to go through.
I was still in such like a bit of like honestly, the pain started once my adrenaline started subsiding and the pain started setting in, then I'm like, it's just really the pain was the focus. It wasn't until probably the next day or two where that's when I'm like, yeah, retelling in detail is a bit triggering and like brings back like flashbacks and really is like, it causes more like stress. So it wasn't until like I was actually like in a bit more stable place that the retelling was a bit problematic.
Would you say that now you'll tell people just to listen to this podcast if they want to hear the story?
Actually, I'll pause. Like, so the police that we spoke to who showed up on scene were like, we need to get a witness statement, please send us an email at least by tomorrow. So after I get admitted to the hospital in the middle of the night and I'm there the next day, towards the end of Friday, I'm filling out my police statement and, going moment to moment of like what happened. And that was a moment where I'm like, oh, retelling this is like really activating. I can feel it in my body. I can feel myself getting stressed. I can feel myself getting tense and I'm like scared.
Yeah, because you're going back to it, right? Like your body, as your memory is like accessing all the details in the memory, it's like your body thinks you're still there.
Yeah, and that's where I've always had the question, like I knew retelling traumatizing stories can be harmful or like re-traumatizing, but I never understood why. But then realizing I think, at least for me in my experience, when you have such acute trauma, where your trauma is tied to a very specific moment, it's not like a memory that's a bit more general and a bit more like long standing. It's a very specific, memory that's being replayed in your mind. And that's where it's like living through that memory in your head. It's like, yeah, that feels real. It feels very vivid. And that's where it's like your body might not know the difference between the memory and the experience itself. And that's where you get like the re-traumatizing. So as I'm like writing this email, I'm sitting there again, doing butterfly taps, and doing deep breathing to ground myself. I grabbed some like ice water and I'm like, I just need to hold it and like try to like ground myself. Yeah. Yeah. And then even the next day, I think it was even like, I don't know if it was the next day or that same night, but like I'm reading a, fantasy novel that my partner suggested at the time. And just like reading this thing that's completely irrelevant. And all of a sudden like these flashbacks like start coming in and I'm like, yeah, I need that cup of water. Yeah, it was intrusive. And that's where I'm like, yeah, I need that water to like ground me and to really help me stay here because my brain's taking me back and there's like that risk of re-traumatization.
It's crazy that the brain, like trying to keep you safe by assessing the current environment, assessing for dangers to try and mitigate the dangers, is re-traumatizing you because you are safe.
Yeah. And that's where we talk about like what's really interesting for me is we talk about the brain. One of my favorite neuroscientists, Lisa Feldman Barrett, she talks about the brain. Like we've heard the brain is a prediction machine, but we don't understand why. And it's like because ambiguity is very dangerous and the brain, as it predicts, can like make these even unconscious decisions and adaptations to help you move throughout your day. It's why there's like that cliche that most of the decisions we make is unconscious because we're just so habitually responding to what's around us. So yeah, in the same way where it's like, oh, we need our brain trying to keep us safe. So it's constantly making predictions. But then, even me now being in a car, I'm American. I drive like an American usually. And so like I'm in and out of traffic. I'll speed a little bit quite fast. But now riding with friends, being in the passenger seat, like I am very cognizant and I like tense up way more. Like I'm like, I hardly ever react in a car, but now I'm like, I feel and I can sense myself getting tense and I'm hyper aware of the road now just within the week after the accident.
I was going to ask you, I was like, oh, how quickly did you get back into the car as a passenger with someone?
My goal was like, I think knowing that there was a severe risk of learning to avoid the anxiety of being in the car.
The more you avoid, the stronger that anxiety will build.
And I realized like that's how it works, right? Like when you have a phobia or whatever, it's like, oh, that your anxiety increases, but you avoid it and that decreases, which just reinforces the phobia and the fear. And so I'm like, I need to get into a car immediately. And as a matter of fact, I still am very much intend to go back to the accident scene and go back to the car in the impound and like just be there just to have that exposure.
It's so intentional. Yeah, for your healing.
Yeah. So I got back into a car. I got discharged Monday from the hospital, and I was in a car getting driven home. And I've been in a car multiple times since.
Have you driven?
No, but I also wasn't driving.
I know. I'm curious to know if you would feel different driving.
Which I don't know, because it was funny because I was really unfortunate. I gave my buddy that car last month.
Oh my gosh.
And so he's driving it. I just gave it to him. He just cleaned it, and he just put like new brakes on it, new winter tires on it. Like, I mean, it was fine, but like he put like a few hundred bucks in it, and yeah.
Oh shit.
So yeah, it's like I don't have a car to drive now. I'm not opposed to driving. I'm very open to it, and I think it's really important to be intentional with re-exposing yourself in a right way. Like, I know that I can handle it, but if someone's like, you know, hyperventilating, having a panic attack, like you need to work your way up there. But yeah, I haven't driven yet.
It's crazy because some people might think, oh, I just need to expose myself to the thing I'm scared of, but please don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
Please. I think Marcus is well suited to do it because he's trained in enough in exposure therapy that he knows.
No, you have to know what's going to overwhelm you when we talk about like even proper exposure therapy.
We're talking about the window of tolerance.
Yes, like with exposure therapy, if you're working with a quality therapist, they're not going to like take you from A to Z and immediately throw you into your deepest, darkest fear.
Like, imagine you show up, I'm scared of spiders. Then they're like, here's one in your face. Bring
a tarantula in your face.
That would be so bad.
Yeah, it's about creating a ladder and like slowly exposing that window of tolerance.
Titration.
I knew like, okay, get in the car, and then like we'll go to the accident place. We'll look. I still haven't looked at the car that was hit, but like,
do you have pictures?
Yeah.
Have you looked at them?
Yeah. It was really funny. There's like a joke. We make it light of it now, but he loves 80s rock, like dad music. And we were driving to the gym, and he's like, "Who is this?" And I'm like, "Dude, I don't know. I don't listen to this old rock music." He's like, "It's my favorite band." And I'm like, "Dude, I don't know, man. Like, I have no idea."
He's like testing your friendship.
Yeah, basically. And it's like funny.
Was it Wham?
No, it was.
That would have been really ironic.
And I was like, I don't know, is it Led Zeppelin? He's like, no, it's Queen.
Oh, Queen, come on.
Was it Bohemian Rhapsody? Because I'm ashamed of you if you didn't know that.
I don't know if you like are Queen fans.
I know Queen fairly well.
But it was like something Bottom Girls.
Oh wow, I'm gonna look so dumb. Fat Bottom Girl.
Fat Bottom Girls. Yeah.
You don't look dumb. Good job.
So we're listening to like, Fat, I think that's the song, is like Fat Bottom Girls. Yeah. And that's like his favorite song. But again, part of like, I'll get his permission to talk about this obviously, but he hasn't listened to that song since. Yeah. And he literally was like, we're playing it to the gym. He's like, this is like one of my favorite songs. And I was like trying to encourage him, like, bro, we need to listen to this. And he's like, I'm not ready. Yeah. And so he still hasn't listened to it as far as I know. Yeah. It's been 8 days. And I'm like, dude, you can't avoid this because you will lose this song to your brain. Yes. But he's like, I'm just not. He's like saying like, oh, well, someday. And I'm like, I know, like he's struggling with it, and I'm like, I don't want him to lose it because it's literally his favorite band. Yeah.
Could you? It just is a prime example of how trauma steals. It can totally steal.
Yeah, heavy shit.
Very heavy shit, and I think that it highlights a lot for me the complexity of working with trauma clients. And I think one of the things that I find the challenging the most, because I'm learning too, is the titration between exploring the edge of the window of tolerance to grow that window so that you can kind of, like you said, maybe revisit the site so that the dysregulation attached to the experience decreases. But being able to know what's enough or too much takes expertise.
Yeah, and I think one of my favorite like professionals, Bruce Perry, who's like probably like the cornerstone of like what we know about trauma right now. Yeah. like he talks about like this is where the client is the expert of themselves. Like
Oh,
we
yeah.
are not the person to say that, even as therapists and professionals, we are not the person to say that this person's okay to be exposed at something.
But devil's advocate for a second, because I've had clients who wouldn't even know how to identify if something's too much. So then we do a lot of prep work in advance of how do you identify emotional dysregulation. And that it's difficult because you can't do trauma work, in my opinion, unless a client is educated on knowing when something is too much.
Yeah, I think that's more gauging. Not that the client's not the expert, but you have to create a structure and a scale of what is too much.
Yes.
But that's our role. But their role and the
Still
client's
the
role is still the expert of, I say when too much is, but you, in order to have too much, you have to have a scale to measure that.
Yeah. And I think there is some realness to attaching that the client is looking to us as the expert to guide them through it.
Yeah, for sure.
But they are the expert of when it's too much.
Yeah, because it's their process, it's their experience, it's their nervous system that's freaking out, to these situations and feelings and thoughts and experiences. Yeah.
Are you struggling with any feeling of anger towards the person who hit you?
Not really, no.
Okay. You know what helps me when I'm angry, if it comes up? I just think, man, that person must have the worst diarrhea. They are just trying so hard to get home. Maybe they pooped their pants. It makes me feel a lot better when someone cuts me off or is a jerk on the road. It makes me feel so much better. Maybe this guy shit his pants and he was trying to...
I was thinking that too. I hope he shit his pants.
No, I think even at the accident site, it was really funny because like I literally just watched these headlights crush me and like hit me. Once I had that realization of like, oh, I'm stable. At that point, I was like, yo, I'm just trying to have a good time. Nothing fucking matters right now. I was like,
We're safe. We're okay.
Yeah, it was just like I even still have like so much gratitude of like, you like what's wrong? Like, what are you gonna tell me what's wrong? Like, this is fine. We're fine. Yeah, I don't have anger.
But there was something really healing about that too, right? Because when you're talking about the stress response system, one of the things that really helps is that sense of community, right? It's like coming back to the village, we're safe, and that the joking and the bonding with those people that were there probably helped regulate your system.
Absolutely. I think
Co-regulating.
yes. And that's where it's like we hear all the time in therapy communities and what have you of like, sharing experiences helps trauma. And that sounds really nice, but it's like, what the fuck does that mean? How? What, like, why? But I can't tell you, like my friends are fucking top tier. I would probably have way more trauma and way more feelings about it. But the fact that people showed up for me at the hospital every day and supported me and was with me, like, I knew I wasn't suffering alone. I knew that people were there to support me. There wasn't a fear around food or finances. Thank you, Canadian healthcare. America, get your shit together. Like, I even think like there was real conversation of like, if I was in America and this happened, I would have doubled my my graduate school tuition literally overnight. And how absurd that would have been, how much pressure that would put on me already with this physical injury
And the stress of the trauma.
Yes.
Yeah.
and so that's where I'm like, the fact that you have, when we talk about supports and both personal and community, but also like systemic of healthcare and resources, like that's what it does, where I'm not saying like I'm fantastic and nothing's wrong. Like I still have 3 broken ribs. It fucking hurts. I'm taking meds. But the fact that I have access to medication, the fact that I can walk, and the fact that I had people around me to support me while I had access to free healthcare, it feels like I've been given a gift, not like in this spiritual sense. I'm not very spiritual, but in the sense of like, I just have so many resources around me. I'm very blessed in that way.
Yeah. It's like calling out your privilege.
Very much so.
Yeah. It's wild to think that there's individuals in parts of the world where they literally die just because they don't have access. Yeah. It's just, calling our privilege out and sitting in that is huge.
And that's where like, even I know there's like, being in Alberta, there's a lot of talk around like the criticisms of Alberta healthcare. And don't get me wrong, like we went to the hospital and it was very clear that we was very filled with a lot of elderly and a lot of like homeless population people. And so that people talk about like how difficult it is to have access. And even the reason I got assessed that night, but I didn't get a trauma bed in like a different wing of the hospital until like 2 p.m. the next day. And they told me at like 6 a.m. like, you're admitted, we just don't have any beds. We have no room. And for a lot of people, there's room for criticism around Alberta healthcare, but I'm like, but you have healthcare, but you have free access to healthcare. And I understand like it's not the most comfortable. I didn't get a room that I was told I was going to get, whatever, but I was very well taken care of. Where again, like throwing a bit of shade to the States, it's like, you know, an ambulance ride can cost 10 grand. Like that's very stereotypical of Americans of like, if you're hurt, call an Uber.
You know, you will still get a bill though.
Yeah, you do.
About $250.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know. Just a heads up. I'm not trying to shit on the healthcare. Just as your friend, want you to be prepared.
Speaks to my privilege that I can afford a bill, but like 200 and whatever dollars for, you know, a T-bone accident.
I know.
Yeah, I'll kiss that money goodbye gladly to have my health guaranteed. Like, and that's where, again, I know there's criticisms around Alberta healthcare, nothing's perfect, sure, but like this shit's pretty fucking nice.
And still, you can have complaints and criticisms for the system, and also appreciate
what it does have.
Right? Like, I mean, people, yeah, it's the same for like any kind of political system, right? It's like, yeah, but yeah.
Thanks for sharing your story with us. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a wild time, but it's definitely, I think it really does reflect a lot on like trauma response. I'm really thankful for obviously our education that we've gotten that helped me. And again, like doing my EMDR butterfly taps. Yeah.
I think it'd be valuable to share with listeners too, like what that really means and what the benefit is of doing it, because they might not know.
And I think you're probably the most well versed in it, because I only understand the fact of like bilateral stimulation. I don't know.
That's the limit.
Okay.
For me too.
Like
I have not been trained in EMDR yet.
I wrote a paper on EMDR, so I feel like I can speak a little bit about it. I guess it's just that. Well, okay, I can tell you a little bit about how it came to be. I totally am forgetting her first name. Shapiro is the last name. She's the one.
Not Ben Shapiro.
It's a woman, Francine Shapiro, I think it is. She's the one who is, credited for coming up with EMDR. And so she had just gotten a breast cancer diagnosis that was pretty bad. And she was like walking through a campus and her eyes were switching, like looking at the trees.
Like that's natural. That naturally happens when you walk. Yeah.
It really happens when you walk. And she noticed that she felt a lot better. And I think that she was a psychology student at the time. If not, she switched to psychology shortly after this. But because she noticed she felt a lot better, she wanted to look into it. So that's how she started researching. And then they started testing it on people who just like that she knew. And anyways, there's a lot of criticisms about the way that it all kind of came to be. But essentially, the idea is that when you stimulate both sides of the brain, they call that bilateral stimulation, either with eye movement, which is where the EM comes from, is eye movement, desensitization, reprocessing. So it's stimulating both sides of the brain by flicking back and forth from either side of your view. They don't actually know exactly how it works, but there's something about doing that allows people to reprocess their trauma or reprocess their brain in some way. And so they tested it on loads of people, and they even do it with, it's more common I think now, is the vibrating paddles. So you just hold them in your hands and they vibrate like in alternating left, right, left, right, left, right. And you can just hold them. And it's essentially, EMDR therapy is essentially talk therapy while doing this. And so, technically, if you're EMDR trained, there is a very specific protocol that you're supposed to follow. But I do know there are therapists that also integrate it with kind of emotion focused or whatever their other modalities are. I've received EMDR therapy and I loved it. And I know a lot of people who've received it as well. And you don't have to talk about your trauma, and that's kind of a common misconception. Doing that can really flood your system. I would argue that would be an inappropriate thing to do to a client. However, there's some merit in that. I think we talked about that.
Flooding is an intervention technique that can be used. Yeah.
I just
can be
protective. Yeah, someone close to me did EMDR and got flooded, and so my bias is I'm not about it because it really hurt them, I think. And so you can do it where you just think about like a moment or a feeling. And so, for example, if you saw something really horrific, you don't have to go back to that scene, but you can focus on the feeling of helplessness or betrayal or, shame. Yeah. So something like that. I've also heard of it similar to talking about exposure therapy, but kind of building a ladder of, let's say if your feeling was like deep sadness, you kind of create a ladder of like the least sad to the most sad memory that you have, and you work with like the shallower, feeling and memories first to kind of create that window of tolerance. So I've seen it be done, or I've heard of it being done in all of those ways. I'm not trained in it, but it is definitely on my bucket list. It's one thing I'm really passionate about.
That was a very good explanation. I'm like proud to be your friend right now.
Oh, hopefully I don't have to edit out too many likes.
We say like too much when we talk. I do it. One thing I have to highlight too is that I love all of this with the EMDR, but I have to wonder with the butterfly taps if there's an element of just bringing the body into the present moment by sensory stimulation. Yeah, like if we think about mindfulness and just like the brain jumping into a past moment that was not safe and living in that past trauma, that tapping kind of reminding yourself like, let's be in the present moment. I'm safe right now. And that also being healing as well.
I wanted to ask you because I've actually never heard of, like the butterfly taps being done in that moment. And so is that something you've heard of, or was your brain just like EMDR, butterfly taps?
So I got that from our prof, Mackenzie.
Yeah. Oh,
Shout out to
Yeah,
Mackenzie Schneider.
yeah. Shout out Mackenzie Schneider is like when I think it's fine. He'll probably be okay telling the story, but like he'll talk about like because he does a ton of trauma work. And he talks about like vicarious trauma is a very real thing where you're receiving so many or so intense traumatic stories that it can be traumatizing for you because again it's impacting your body.
And I was going to say to listeners, like you totally can be traumatized by someone else's story.
Yes. And so he's done so much work, and so he'll like we remember talking about that in class where he's talking about how to actually maintain your own resiliency and maintain your own health while receiving such intense stories. And he'll say like he said he'll like alternate his feet. Or like he'll be sitting there and very subtly be like tapping with both hands to really, ground himself and make sure he's not, getting overwhelmed by these stories himself. And so that's where I'm like, oh, it happened. You can do it in the moment to prevent trauma. So I was like, just took it from him of like, all right, this seems necessary right now.
Give it a shot.
Yeah.
It's interesting because as like a technique for avoiding countertransference, and we learned this from our very first teacher. Oh my gosh, Ryan James. I don't know if I should have said his last name, but anyway, Ryan, he's a counselor. He's great.
Ryan James.
He was so awesome. Anyway, but we were like, I don't know. I know for me, one of the things I was most afraid of coming into being a therapist is countertransference. I don't know. I read about it and was freaked out that was a thing and that I'd have to worry about. And I've kind of been afraid, I'll say, or not afraid, wary of ensuring that my own triggers aren't getting in the way of my, being able to look after clients. And anyway, and one of the things he said was essentially using mindfulness techniques to stay in the present, which is what you basically described. I don't do bilateral, but definitely I always think about how do my toes feel right now? And that's mindfulness, right? Or body scanning or. Even
speaking of that, Mackenzie also mentioned like, we talk about trauma being in the body so much, but it's almost like a buzzword of like, what the fuck does it even mean? And so the way he really shared with us is like, your body gets so activated that a lot of times what happens is, you start shaking. And he even showed us like a video of like, animals when they're attacked by predators, like, if they survive and play dead, they'll get up and they'll just like tremble for a few minutes and then they'll just gallivant and run off. And what he like shared, and I guess like what research says right now is like that shaking and that trembling after traumatic experience is your body like, basically recalibrating yourself with the trauma.
Endorphins, it's the endorphins that make it happen. Yeah.
Okay.
I only know that from giving birth.
Oh.
Yeah. Because you start, well, I did anyway, at that, like through right around transition, I think you start shaking, or I did. I start shaking, and my midwives told me it's the endorphins.
Which like that which I mean, makes sense of like your natural opioids are trying to calm down, but you still need to process that. And what Mackenzie was sharing is if you inhibit that, if you don't shake, you're more or less locking that trauma in your body, in the sense where your body's like freaking out but not having this outlet to actually process it. And so that's where you have your body's not able to actually process through the traumatic event, and that's where you have the anxiety when similar or similar identifying situations arise, where you then now have like a phobia or this high deterrent away from similar situations, because your body recognizes it or sees it as familiar, and now you're just looping of this feels like it's going to be climactic and extremely dangerous.
Yeah, I think it's your anterior cingulate cortex that like scans and identifies it's not safe, and then it triggers your amygdala that pulls from the hippocampus. That's like, I think that's the neuroscience. But fact check me. I'm just kind of proud I know that. But I had a thought and it escaped me. I was too busy thinking about the brain. Here's my thought is that I think about people in my life that like just don't seem to be fazed by a lot of things. Like their resilience is a lot higher. And sometimes I notice those people, when they're angry, they let themselves get angry more. And it's like, I'm not condoning we're shouting at people and abusing people and, using anger as a weapon, but there's something real about feeling the effing feelings. Sorry, feeling the fucking feelings. Okay.
We already got to put a content warning on this.
Exactly. I'm allowed to swear. And I think that the moment we repress, and one of my classmates and dear friends talks to their clients in this way when it comes to feeling the impact of things, is if you don't, it's like when you're in the pool and you're like pushing a ball underwater and you're trying to hold it there. And the more you hold it there, and it's just going to shoot up like 1,000 times higher. I use it with clients all the time.
I think it was the same sort of like similar analogy within my emotionally focused therapy training is, you have these like 5 steps where you have perception, a feeling. I'm going to butcher this. It's so dumb, but basically like very similar of like your body's and your emotions actually come from your body. It's your body's interpretation of the sensations and the stimuli that's happening, and then your brain's making sense of it that makes you feel something that then is a shorthand version to help you react. So it's why when somebody cuts you off, it's like, that's dangerous, and you're self-centered. You're like, immediately it's like you're an asshole, you're on the defensive, because it helps you keep you safe, and it helps you process and actually make sense of things, because the idea of random dangerous people in the world is way too ambiguous and way too scary to really live in, and we don't have control on that. And so it's very hard to like stay in that place. Anyways, point being, like, we have these feelings and these bodily sensations, but it's like that's our body's calculating that. We can't stop that. We can't stop our brain from interpreting things, but trying to suppress that and trying to not feel our feelings takes effort, and it takes a lot of bandwidth, which is why people who suppress, you're exhausted because it takes so much energy to not feel. And then that's where it's like, when it does come up, you're so tired, you're so exhausted, you're fucking, so fatigued because you're so used to like trying to keep a lid on a pressurized can.
So touchy.
Yes. And that's where like when something finally pushes you over the edge, it's an explosion over quote unquote something small. It's like, no, it's not small to you, because this isn't one thing setting you off. You've been dealing with 500 and this is the 501 that you just beyond your capacity, and now you're just gone.
And beyond that, it's the downside of repressing. You can't selectively repress emotions. If you repress an emotion, you're repressing all of them. You can't, I'm going to just not feel anger and I'll feel everything else. No, it's not a thing.
Again, it's your body sensations. Like, you can't suppress one sensation, which again, that's also why, like, maybe this is a bit of like a left turn, but it's why drugs are a thing.
Oh, hell yeah.
Drugs, like getting into like the destigmatizing of drugs, it's people use drugs. People say escapism, but that's such a cop out and so victim blaming of people are so overwhelmed in the world and in their emotions and in their bodies that you have these drugs that either numb all of the bad things and like kind of, take you so much lower and like artificially release some of that pressure, or you have like these high drugs that just dump all of your good happy chemicals to help off center all that pain and all that difficulty that you're experiencing. And that's where you get addiction, is people who don't have resources, community connection, things that we talk about that help buffer these traumas. And so you turn to the only thing that you do have access to, which is a drug. And then it's this constant narrowing window of, I can only find happiness and pleasure and release here in this thing. And that's where it's like, yeah, now you are a slave to that substance.
Yeah. It can be food too. It could be masturbation. It can be behavioral addictions. Yeah. I like to, with clients, if I could like wave a magic wand, the one thing I would take away is shame attached to addictions. I don't ever use the term addiction with my clients. I call it dependency, because it's depending on something to cope with the problem that you have. It's a solution to a problem.
And that's where the whole adage of drugs are not, a medical epidemic. It's an emotional one. It's a mental health epidemic.
Yeah. That's why I like doing from DBT a chain analysis with my clients who are depending on substances to cope, because at what point in your experience are you tapping into something that's so painful and difficult that you need to escape from it? And I find a lot of the times the patterns of behavior are so ingrained and have been happening for such a long time that there's a complete disassociation with what is even happening internal. All that they know is that I feel bad right now and I want to, and then now I have a craving. But then when I actually do the chain analysis and dive deeper, it's, every time something in your world triggers your belief that you're worthless, the belief that you are a failure, the belief that you are, worthless and failure. Those are the two common things that I come across with my addictions clients. That's when it's triggering. And I find then it always naturally comes into trauma work, because my addictions clients want, I want to quit this substance and let's do addictions work. But it always then goes into trauma work. And it takes a while, because oftentimes the client is not wanting trauma work because they don't understand the connection. So
I was going to say, I really like in internal family systems or IFS, like thinking of parts theory. And through that lens, they say that your addiction is protecting you from something, right? And so in IFS, they label different, you can have many different parts, but they label different parts often as like managers, protectors, exiles. But the protectors are the ones protecting you from probably something painful, right? And so I really like conceptualizing negative patterns through that lens of protecting you from something. I think it helps destigmatize it a little bit and honor it in a way that it's actually, I had this conversation literally today with a client, but about something completely different, but just that protector, turning to the alcohol is a protector because it's protecting you from that feeling of hopelessness or that feeling of worthlessness.
And they're not even a lot of times aware that's even happening.
I was also going to add, like, your note on, you can't really do, addictions, dependency work without doing trauma work. And I love clarifying with people that trauma is not a specific kind of event. It's a specific kind of outcome. Because when we talk about trauma, people say, like, is this traumatic? And it's like, nobody can answer that but you. Because trauma isn't, I think, if I'm not incorrect, but like the definition of trauma is not something where an event, a specific event qualifies as traumatic. It's, is there an event that you experience that reshapes how you think from that moment forward?
Changed your view of the world.
Yes. And something that drastically impacted you so much that moment becomes, a linchpin in how you think, feel, believe, and experience the world around you. That is trauma.
Totally.
And recognizing that nobody has the ability to tell you that something's not traumatic. And that doesn't mean that you can go around and say that, this person traumatized you and that's their fault. It's not something that you should, it's not something to use to blame and weaponize, but it is helpful to recognize that, somebody treating you a certain way, or, an experience that you've had with family members or in the world, whatever, a partner, those things can be traumatic. And it's a very it's a bit of a spectrum in the sense that, again, our bodies are always learning, our minds are always predicting, and so because of that, we're always changed by what's around us. Our brains are always responding to stimuli, so we're always learning. That's what learning is, adaptation. But it's, you know, a very specific moment or a very specific experience that locks us into that mode of thinking. It's like, that is trauma, because that quote unquote has taught you something that is very difficult to then escape.
I always define trauma with my clients, because there is a definition of trauma in the DSM. There is, but I don't like it so much. And I always say trauma is when you go through something that overwhelms your ability to cope.
Yeah. Yeah.
The healthy coping mechanisms that you have were overwhelmed. And so,
I don't know if I agree with that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think
you can disagree. That's okay.
Yeah, I think on the disagreement point, it's like, because you can have a traumatic, you can have a experience that you don't cope with that doesn't leave a lasting mark. And I think that's where my definition's a bit different.
Yeah.
Of, you can go outside of your winter tolerance, come back down, and what took you out of that you couldn't cope with might not be so impactful that it changes your worldview or how you experience certain things. And that would then, for me at least, in my understanding, disqualify it as it's not traumatic. But I'm also curious why you disagree.
I guess I was thinking about, so when you were talking about like your worldview changing, I really do identify with that from my own experience. Like, for example, my dad died when I was 16. He died in a motorcycle accident. I'm pretty open about it. It's easy to talk about now. It'll actually be 20 years this year. That's crazy. Oh my God, that makes me sound really old. Anyway, so the point being is that I don't know that it overwhelmed my ability to cope, because I think that I coped well, but I would still say it was traumatizing. And for me, the way that I look at that trauma and, you know, other traumas that have happened that kind of re-traumatized that original thing was that life can literally turn on a dime, right? And so for me, a lot of the trauma came from that, is that, you know, things will be fine, and then all of a sudden, out of literally nowhere, something really fucked up happens. And and so that's the worldview that shifted for me as, you know, a 16-year-old that suddenly, you know, went from two parents to one parent. And, you know, I was like triggered by things like, so he died in a motorcycle accident. He was stunting on his motorcycle on the road, which is illegal and you shouldn't do it, and lost control of his bike and got hit by a car and died. And my high school put up posters in the school with yellow motorcycles on them, which was just like my dad's, that was like, I don't know, Arrive Alive or some stupid, like, you know, PSA poster, that it was like, no one told leadership or whoever put that poster up, you know, that one of their students' dad died on a yellow motorcycle. Like, you know, just shitty timing, like just little things like that. And so it was trauma in that I had definitely had triggers, definitely had to cope with lots of things after the fact, big worldview changes. But like my family was, you know, my parents were separating before my dad died. And actually, like my immediate family, things actually settled after my dad died, which is awful, but also true. And, you know, our family really came together. My friends really stepped up for me. Like there's so many positives in a way that came from it that, I don't know that it overwhelmed my ability to cope. So that
I ask a different question. So you felt you had the skills and tools and like growth in order to cope perfectly fine with your dad dying.
I mean, perfectly fine.
Like coping being that, I guess we'd have to define what coping means.
Yeah, like I didn't, you know, start abusing drugs afterwards or alcohol. I didn't, you know, my grades didn't shit the bed. Like, you know, like nothing big adverse thing happened. Like it hurt. I was fucking sad. Like I grieved for lots of years, you know.
But I think even as you tell that, like when you define coping, coping is really just how are you handling that experience. And that's where it's like you can have friends and support and again resources that are coping. Drugs are coping.
Yeah.
But when I hear that, what strikes me is like, you know, yellow paper motorcycles around the school usually is not a trigger. No, most people who see that are going to be fine. You in that moment can't cope with that. So yellow motorcycles become traumatizing.
Emotionally dysregulated.
Yeah. For sure. And then also like what you're talking about, like this stark contrast. So it's not just, it can be something as simple as yellow motorcycles, whether it's a picture or images or, you know, paper things. Like those things can be triggering and, you know, reveal trauma. But even as you were talking as well, it's also, you know, your beliefs, your worldview around instability and like insecurity of what is stable, what can last, and having this sense of probably fleetingness where maybe something can get taken away super fast.
And like what is safe.
And and what is long lasting. And that is also like, you know, a very internal, you know, traumatic scar of, it's not something you can obviously see and people can put in front of you, but it's a worldview change and an experience where, oh, I don't believe in, you know, longevity anymore. It doesn't feel real. Yeah. And that's the same thing with like, you know, sexual trauma, where it's like your sense of safety, your sense of security, your sense of autonomy, those things are shattered, and those are normative pieces of identity, but those are very hard to identify and suss out as, you know, being lost or being broken.
Yeah. I think, no, this is a very good conversation, because I think from even a clinician standpoint, so we're given the definition of trauma from DSM, which is not reachable to clients. It's so clinical. If you say that to a client, I'm sorry, that's not going to be effective. But then we're also kind of told, well, let the client decide what trauma is. But then the client comes to you and asks you, what is trauma? So in my definition of, you know, the overwhelming your ability to cope is my attempt to bring it in a reachable way to clients. And I do like your definition better. And I think depending on the clinician you talk to, they'll have a different definition, because trauma is so largely defined by the client, but the client still looks to you for support on defining what trauma is.
And I'm not like a trauma expert by any means.
Me neither.
I'm also not trained in EMDR or in trauma therapy specifically. I've worked with trauma clients for sure, trauma youth. And that's where I think even what you're talking about, like something out to the window of tolerance, what's interesting with that is like, yeah, when you have experiences with these things that take you outside of your window of tolerance repeatedly for so long, that's where you get, you know, the development of what's called CPTSD, of, oh, you know, complex PTSD.
Not quite in the DSM yet.
Yeah, not in the DSM yet, but is internationally recognized in, you know, other Western developed countries.
I think we all just assume it's a thing, even though the DSM has to catch up.
Yeah. But yeah, that's where it's like, oh, I have CPTSD from these family members, from partners. And so I have difficulty dating and having intimacy and having relationships, not because I was physically abused and not because I was hit or my body was damaged, but because my nervous system is constantly dysregulated from this person, these types of experiences, that then now it's kind of spun out, and now
like people aren't safe.
Yeah, people aren't safe.
Yeah. I think one of the exercises that I was mentored to use with trauma clients that I really like is the same different exercise. Have you two heard of this?
Our supervisor shared it with me in like, you know, to avoid some countertransference. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like in those moments when you know, logically, you know, I'm safe, but there's a trigger where, you know, the hippocampus is communicating with the amygdala saying, warning, anxiety, trigger my vagus nerve, make me anxious. You know, we know the biology behind it, right? But the reality is there's something in my current environment that's triggering my past trauma. And what can help in that moment is going, okay, what is the thing that's same right now? What's the same right now that's triggering me? What's different?
The smell, the song. Exactly. Yeah.
Like that color, or, you know, and then going back and forth between those two things can really help validate the current moment and saying, yeah, there is a real thing that's bringing me back to that moment. But what's highlighting what's different can help the body kind of calm and the brain stop its alarm system saying, danger, to say, actually, there isn't danger right now, but I see the similarities.
Yeah. That reminds me of like a story in one of Bruce Perry's books where there was a student who experienced significant trauma and was like really, I think it was not doing well in school. And so, you know, trauma specialist gets called of like, we got to figure this out. This kid's, you know, falling in the cracks of the system. And, you know, he literally freaks out on his teacher. And like, he's like, you know, yelling at his teacher and what have you. And they're thinking like, this kid's having an outburst. He's uncontrollable. Like, what's happening? Like, problem kid, quote unquote, like is being like the label put on him. Not to realize that, you know, after digging into his history, his experiences, understanding his trauma history and what happened to him, that and like whenever the teacher would try to help him and try to like help with homework, they would get like quite close and like whatever, and the kid would get so triggered. And it came out that that kid eventually recognized that the teacher had the same colonus as like sexual perpetrator. And so developing an awareness of triggers and what is traumatizing can be so difficult. Like smells, that's freaking hard. Paper yellow bicycles, or like motorcycles. Like also like,
It's not a trigger anymore, but you know, it was real fresh at the time.
yeah, but it's like these
on the wound.
and these things are really hard. And even when you talk about like, I'm not a CPTSD expert, so I don't know, but like even, you know, if you have trauma from a parent, mom, dad, it's like, oh, men in power, women in authority figures, like it's going to be dysregulating. But it's really hard to tease out. But that's where getting help, meeting with a therapist, reflecting, and really getting into the nitty-gritty can be really helpful, because otherwise you're going to think that you're just losing your shit, that you're inferior, you're incapable, when in reality there's a very valid reason your body's becoming activated. You don't need to have shame for that, because it's not your fault.
It's not a lack of willpower. Right. It's not a lack of strength. Right. Yeah.
You're coping. Your body's trying to cope. That's okay. You're definitely not going to learn how to cope by shaming yourself to saying that you should be better. Your body's trying to survive. It's doing what it's supposed to do.
I had to kind of bring a little bit of levity. Sorry, you know me, this is heavy. I am pretty sure this would not identify my client. They would know it's them listening, but no one would know it's them. We were talking about quitting something, and they were like, one of my motivations is I just don't want to look like I live in a trailer park. Like they felt like their substance use or whatever their addiction was, I won't say, was just like in like a lighthearted way, was a way to kind of like, that's not who I want to be. I don't want to be trailer park. Not that there's anything wrong with living in a trailer park. Yeah. They're actually quite affordable, and I would be down to live in one, but I thought that was quite funny. It's like we were going through the heaviness, like what we just were discussing, and they're like, you know what? I just don't want to look like I live in a trailer park. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Honestly, when it comes to like coping, like as we're talking about, it's like same with trauma. Like only you can determine what's traumatic. It's like also only you can determine what's worth living for. Like it can be, you know, kids and, you know, amazing job and these things, but it's like maybe you're like, I love movies, and you just are a big movie buff and you love creativity. Like if that's worth living for, like that's okay. Or like
maybe you love your trailer park,
yeah. Like find your thing and find your reason for living.
Yeah. I think what's wild is that when people have this pervasive pattern of repressing, and then they're wondering, why am I depressed? And I'm like, oh, I wonder why, you know, because you haven't allowed yourself to feel anything for a very long time. And I used to think depression was this mysterious thing that was very difficult to understand. And certainly there's very many avenues to depression, but one of them being that repressing and not actually taking the steps to process trauma. And yeah, that's huge. Well, thanks, Marcus.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your story with us and kicking off a very intense conversation about trauma. But I think it's important for, you know, people who are listening to feel that their experience is valid too. And, you know, that, you know, lots of people get into car accidents and they can be traumatizing. And so I think there's some validation in that story as well, but also just that, you know, the mechanisms of trauma and the trauma treatments and the things that can be helpful can I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like can be helpful regardless of what the trauma is, if that makes sense. Like they can be really important.
Agreed. it's like very healing to hear other stories and find connection in those stories and not feel like we're quite so alone.
Yeah. I think as a parting kind of like tidbit, I think what's really important as we talk about trauma and as we say, like, empower clients and the public with the reality that what they deem as traumatic is that the downside to that is that if everything's traumatic, if you believe something's traumatic, it drastically lowers your ability to actually cope. Because it,
Really?
well, yeah, it's like part of what makes something like manageable stress from like chronic stress is how much power do you think you have over it?
Right.
How much control do you have over it?
Yeah.
And if you say, if you, in your mind and the meaning that you make, you say, I have nothing to handle this.
Right.
It's just something that's happening to me. I'm overwhelmed. Then your ability to respond is drastically reduced.
Totally.
And so if everything is traumatic, while it might offer a lot of validation and it might offer a lot of, you know, social empathy where people can understand where you're coming from, which is fantastic. The price tag with that, as you're saying, is you're creating a meaning where a lot of it's outside of your control. A lot of your life is unmanageable, which makes you, you know, put into a position of a victim. And again, that's not to be derogatory in the sense that a victim is less than, but it is disempowering. It's a disempowering position, and it's an uphill battle. And so while people communicate about trauma and their trauma being valid, and that's a great conversation that we need to have more of, there is a downside that if everything is traumatic, you're putting yourself in a really vulnerable position to not do as well with the difficulties that you're experiencing. So be mindful of what you account for as trauma and traumatic, because you don't want to, you know, count all of your eggs and have more overwhelming things than what you bargained for.
That, you know, that's really well said. I misunderstood. Initially, when you said that, I was thinking it made me think of in emotion therapy, how when you label the emotion, how it actually gives you control of it, right? And so I was like, what? Like, I don't understand, but that makes sense and actually speaks to a mistake that I made early on in our first class with Ryan James, where we recorded ourselves counseling, and the person that I was counseling told me the story of something that I said, like, wow, actually, no, like, that is really traumatic, but they hadn't used that word, and then I kind of put that on them. And so Ryan had kind of called me out, you know, in my feedback on how, you know, it's not necessarily appropriate for me to say that. At the moment, I think it went well in the sense that my fake client, my classmate, didn't really perceive it as traumatic, but also didn't understand why it was still lingering, you know, in her mind. And so my attempt to label it as trauma is like, no, that's a valid thing. You know, like, I think I could have done the same thing by tuning into fear, not trauma, right? And so I think it's fair to say that, you know, a client gets to decide what's trauma, not the therapist, right? Like you've said. And yeah, and that we could even, if we suspect as therapists that something could be traumatizing, maybe we could use the word fear instead of trauma. That, you know, might still get you where you wanted to go. That was my own mistake, but yeah, it totally speaks to what you'd said.
Yeah, it's really, you know, we can share with our clients what trauma is, but then again, it's a label that they get to use. But I think you're right. Like, it's not a feeling. Trauma's not a feeling. Trauma's an outcome. And so being able to differentiate, like, it's not something you label as a feeling and as an experience, but it's an outcome of, this is how I process things.
Yeah. And I think it's also so important because we get so caught up in problem in psychology. I mean, obviously, otherwise the client wouldn't be coming. But I think there's such importance on highlighting client strengths too. It's like, we are actually resilient.
Yes. And this is where it's like, yeah, even if you are legitimately both clinician and client determined to be traumatized, you have strengths, you have assets, you have, you know, resources within your disposal that you can use, and using a strength-based approach that even if you're down and out, you have something to cope with, even if it's as simple as your breath. And I know that sounds super cheesy and probably like really, like, you know, really simple for like you'd fucking say, Mr. Therapist, but it's like, yeah, like, we know, again, with how trauma is experienced in the body, that deep breathing and relaxing your body can dramatically help you manage the dysregulation and have that calming effect that you need to get through very uncomfortable situations. And so whether it's breathing, whether it's temperatures, whether it's sour candies, these like simple sensory sort of tricks hold a lot of weight, along with obviously, you know, trauma therapies, deep work, you know, all that kind of stuff of the big guns of managing therapy. But anyways, I just want to make that point before we end.
Thank
I feel
you.
like it's really important, just to counterbalance all the validation that, you know, knowing, being able to use the label of trauma and understanding what trauma is and understanding both pros and cons is really important.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.